Protect yourself. Protect yourself.
All right. Well, that was embarrassing. Jim, let's
Well,
move
I'm
on.
sorry. I'm sorry that you feel embarrassed, Brian. You didn't do that bad. I got you through
Yeah,
it.
okay. Well, let's before you sound like one of the contortions there, but let's go now, Jim, to another show that we watched this past week, one that I think some people were intrigued by in advance. Dark Side of the Rings episode on Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Well, yes, and we did want the one pressing question that I thought we might get an answer to. Why is everybody mad at Missy Beefcake? We didn't get the answer. We got teased at the end. It took right at the end of the program, about the last 10 minutes, were people weighing in on was she or was she not the reason why that Hulk and Beef are no longer friends.
Boy, how scared is everyone from Tampa of upsetting Hulk Hogan?
Boy, yeah, we don't know. We don't want to get involved in anything. Good Lord, it's like he's standing behind him with a fucking hammer.
They don't want to be
But-
cut out like Beefcake was.
Cut out of what?
The world
What?
of Hulkamania, just being around Terry's spirit.
Who would give a shit? Right, but anyway, nevertheless, I didn't really even take notes on this episode because there wasn't any new ground broken as far as Brutus Beefcake's career or whatever. And to be honest, it shed the light. I remember the clip of Memphis television with them being interviewed, Terry and Eddie Boulder, the Boulder brothers, was the day that the Freebirds made their first appearance playing the Freebird music on Memphis TV. That was the TV that took place the weekend that the Wrestling Fans International Association convention was in town in 1979. So I was there in the studio and have some cool pictures of Lance interviewing the guys and etc. But that was their first, as everybody knows, kind of their first territory. And they explained in the Dark Side episode that when Hogan started training to wrestle, that Ed Leslie was his friend as well. I ought to do this too. And they were working on being bodybuilders and just kind of got in the business. And that was the thing I remember seeing Hulk and his brother Eddie at that period of time where they were both rookies. Hogan was green, but you could tell he had something. He could talk a little bit, and he was the size of him and just the physique. You could get something out of that. With Eddie at that time, you remember the ridiculous long blonde hair. Just even then, the fans saw him as the little brother that probably wasn't any good, right? And I'm not trying to knock him. Say everybody has to start somewhere. But I've told the story before. Jarrett tried to give him a push and put him in an angle in a main event with Ron Bass and Pete Austin, a guy named Pete Austin from Boston, who only wrestled for a couple of years in the 70s, but he was here at that point. And they put them in the main event on a card that also featured Lawler and Dundee against the Freebirds. And that was the night that the Fargos worked with Jackie and Roughhouse were against Wayne Ferris, Larry Latham, and Danny Davis in a 3-on-2 handicap. But to try to make the Boulder brothers important, they put them on last. They couldn't follow Lawler and Dundee and the Freebirds and the fucking Fargos in a tear the house down thing. And I never saw it in Memphis before, but people were actually leaving during the main event. Usually I was Lawler. That's what the people that were there came to see, and the people that didn't pay snuck in to see the main event, right? They're leaving during the main event. It was brutal. And I get, as they mentioned in the show, Hulk went on and picked things up because of his size and his look and the way that he could talk. People instantly started using him. Whereas Eddie Boulder became Dizzy Hogan. What were some of the other names? God, I've forgotten about him. Now, he went to Portland.
Dizzy
He went
Ed
different
Hogan.
places. Dizzy Ed Leslie or Dizzy Ed.
I like the reason too. Why would you name that? Terry Funk just said I look like I'm dizzy.
Yeah. So it never really worked because they kind of said in the episode, some guys have are great in-ring performers, and some guys get the right gimmick. Well, he never had the right gimmick until they did Brutus Beefcake. And unfortunately, you go back and look now, and that was such an iconic gimmick and name and everything they did with him that people say, oh, he was a big star in wrestling. Literally, that was the WWF was the only place that Beefcake ever worked where he was featured on top in any money-making, prominent position. And when he left the WWF, he couldn't take it with him because Vince had it trademarked, and that's where Bischoff didn't mind. Everybody likes Beefcake, right? They're not knocking him as a person, but Bischoff said, I just took him working there to be the Hogan tax. He knew that he had to give Beefcake a job, but he couldn't be Beefcake, so they had him do umpty more different gimmicks, the Disciple and the Booty Man and the fucking whatever. And they went through some of those. I can't remember those either. Nobody can. And it's sad that he wasn't the greatest worker, but he had personality and he was over the top and he'd do whatever. But that's a case of when you've got a gimmick like that that gets over, but the company owns it, you can't take it anywhere else and you're fucked. And by that point, at the end of the WCW run, he did some indies after a while, but he had, as they mentioned, he moved to Boston to be around his family and his kids when his ex split up. And, he, except for indies in the early 2000s, that was kind of it. So really his window there was 12, 13 years, but only, he was in the business 20 years, but he was only Brutus Beefcake for 4 or 5?
From 84 until 93.
Okay, so for 9 years and he wasn't there consistently. He was in and out.
The last couple of years because
the last couple
after 1990, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, then it's entertaining in a way, but this is another episode where the guy may have been his own worst enemy. He's got to move to fucking Boston and get a job as a toll booth worker. But, how does a toll booth worker afford cocaine? To have the cocaine in the fucking booth to shut the rapid transit system down when they find it and think it's anthrax.
It's not just rich people buying cocaine.
Well, here's the thing. If I've been a major television superstar and then I'm reduced to working as a toll booth collector, but I'm still spending money on cocaine, shoot me in the fucking head, for one thing. God damn, we got to have some fucking perspective and level of importance to these things. But also, the story was disputed because he said it was a BC headache powder. But Greg Valentine, his longtime tag team partner, was quoted as saying, well, you want me to be honest with you? It was cocaine. If it was a BC headache powder, wouldn't it be in a BC headache powder wrapper? Why would you take the fucking headache powder and put it into a little plastic baggie, Brian? Would you do that?
Greg Valentine's the guy sitting at the end of the bar that just has life figured out.
Yeah. And he's never upset about anything. He's just, I'll tell you what it was. But and then, as I mentioned, my other, takeaway from it was they, over the last 10 minutes, they examined, what's happened? Because Missy and Brutus seem to be happy as two pigs in poop, and I'm happy for them and glad for them. But a lot of other people didn't seem to have anything good to say about her, but nobody would explain why. And that's apparently Hogan is quoted as saying, well, I had to cut Beefcake off as it has to do with the woman that he married. But she don't know, she says, and nobody else is wanting to say anything. And
they were hanging out the night before and there were no problems, and they showed up the next day at his house and all of a sudden there were problems.
He was cold, like they flipped a switch. So they left us with a cliffhanger. We're never going to know, but apparently, and is that they brought Hogan in when Beefcake got his face caved in, which, by the way, a classic fucking episode title, Saving Face, the Brutus Beefcake story. But they called Hogan into the hospital. They were
It's like a New York Post headline from the
Yeah.
80s.
They were friends all that time, but now Hogan won't speak to him. What the fuck is, But anyway, we didn't get that question answered, but it was a look into the life of Brutus Beefcake, who, by the way, again, here, another one of these guys, the bodybuilders. And now he's 350 pounds, looks like they filled him with sand. I hope it's not due to injuries sustained in the ring, but at the same time, it seems like if you had injuries sustained in the ring that were slowing you down in your 60s, you might want to lose some weight. I find it worked for me. I'm never going to let any of these motherfuckers, these goddamn bench pressing, bodybuilding son of a bitches, forget that I look better than all of them now. The worm finally turned.
The way you keep going on about her on the show, I was expecting some kind of Marty Funk kind of situation. Missy Beefcake, beyond, either some plastic surgery or tanning issues, I really couldn't even figure it out.
She's from Florida, been in the sun a lot.
Well, she's from Boston, I think, but she seems rather pleasant.
Well, and that's why, but remember, it was like there was a big feud on the social media with her and Greg Valentine here not long ago, and she was saying what a miserable, no good son of a bitch Greg Valentine was. And Greg Valentine said, well, I fucking hate that bitch.
She said that, and Greg Valentine, when reached for comment, said, fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you.
Go fuck yourself.
So we never got to the bottom of all of that. But they seem happy as two kids, two star-crossed lovers on prom night.
I feel like this was a disappointing episode. I thought last week's episode was really good. This week's, I don't know, it could have been better. I don't know what exactly it was missing. It bounced around a lot historically. And
if you weren't, besides the face accident and surgery, which was, everybody was, oh God, the doctor describing how he put his face back together and they peeled his skin off and all that stuff. If you weren't concerned that this longtime friendship between Hulk Hogan and his buddy went awry, or a fan of Brutus Beefcake from the period of 1985 to 1993, it was a little dry. A little dry.
Yeah, and by the end of it, it almost felt like the producers were working with him on this video plea for Hulk Hogan to talk to him again.
Yeah, no, it sounded like a piece on a telethon. Folks, only you can get these two back together again. If you'll just send now, we'll send you this commemorative pin. But Dark Side of the Ring is still on Vice TV on Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And next week is, God damn it, I forgot.
Handsome Harley Race.
Handsome Harley. And there's got to be some great footage on that. We talked about, they found some incredible footage with the family.
Well, the most important thing is the preview video they did to show next week's episode. There was a clip of a white man seemingly with a perm, walking away from a ring on fire. So either they addressed Hulk Hogan's story in comical fashion, or, let's see what happens.
I know that I will be on that program, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to tune in it's a safe shot. I'll be on next week, but I've mentioned that story in a tongue-in-cheek manner, and potentially that may be the manner in which that's applied, but Harley's going to set some things on fire next week.